There's a moment, right before your life changes, where everything feels normal. That's what makes it so cruel. You go about your routine, thinking the world is exactly as you left it, completely unaware that somewhere, in the shadows of your life, something is waiting. For me, that moment happened on a quiet Wednesday night. Vanessa had gone to bed early, claiming she wasn't feeling well. That wasn't unusual lately. Ever since we moved into this house, she had been off. Restless. Distracted. Some nights, I'd find her standing in the hallway, staring at nothing. When I asked what was wrong, she'd just shake her head, offer a weak smile, and say, "Just tired." I had let it go. Because marriage was about trust, right? And I had never had a reason to doubt her. Until I found the photos. It started with a box. We were still unpacking, slowly turning the house into a home. That night, I had been searching for an old set of books when I stumbled across it, an old, dust-covered cardboard box shoved into the back of the hallway closet. It wasn't labeled. I probably would have ignored it if I hadn't noticed the edge of a photo album peeking out from inside. Curious, I pulled it free, brushed off the dust, and flipped it open. The first page was exactly what I expected: Vanessa, years younger, standing at the altar in a white dress. Smiling. Beautiful. Her first wedding. Before me. She had told me about it once, in passing. A quick marriage, barely 2 years, ending in a clean divorce. No hard feelings, no lingering pain. I had never thought to ask for details. But now, looking through the album, I wondered why she had hidden this away. I turned the page. More wedding photos. Vanessa and her ex-husband cutting the cake. Dancing. Laughing. And then, I saw him. The man stood in the background, slightly out of focus, but watching. His expression was impossible to read. Not angry. Not happy. Just there. At first, I thought it was a coincidence. A guest caught in the frame, someone Vanessa barely knew. But as I flipped through the album, the unease in my stomach grew. Because he was in every photo. Standing in the crowd during the vows. Lurking near the edge of the dance floor. In the background of the toast, his eyes locked on Vanessa with an intensity that made my skin crawl. Page after page. Always watching. I swallowed hard, staring at the man's face. He was in his mid-30s, dark hair, sharp features. Handsome, but in an unsettling way. Like someone who knew a secret he'd never tell you. And then it hit me. These photos were over a decade old. Vanessa hadn't even met me yet. So why did I recognize this man? I closed the album, my heart pounding. Something was wrong. This wasn't just an old wedding album. It was a warning. A piece of Vanessa's past that she had never meant for me to see. And I needed answers. I left the box where I found it, and went to our bedroom. Vanessa was already asleep, curled under the blankets, breathing slow and steady. The sight of her should have been comforting. Instead, it made me feel sick. I stood in the doorway, staring at her, my mind racing. She had never mentioned this man. Never hinted at anything about him. But he had been there, at her wedding, in the background of her life, watching. And now somehow I knew him. I just didn't know how. Yet. The next morning, I waited until Vanessa left for work before going back to the closet. I pulled out the wedding album, flipped to one of the clearer photos of the man, and snapped a picture of it with my phone. Then I did what any sane person would do when they found a stranger lurking in their wife's past. I searched for him. At first I got nothing. Just pages of random faces, social media accounts that didn't match. But then, on the third search, I found him. A news article. My blood went cold. The headline read, "Missing man presumed dead. Mystery surrounds businessman's disappearance." I clicked the link, my hands suddenly unsteady. The article was short, but the details were disturbing. His name was Daniel Cross. A successful investor. Known for his charm, his influence. And for vanishing without a trace 6 months ago. I stared at his face, comparing it to the one in the wedding photos. It was the same man. The exact same man? But that didn't make sense. These photos were 10 years old. Daniel Cross had been alive 6 months ago. And now? He was gone. I felt something cold crawl up my spine. Who the hell was he? And why had Vanessa hidden him from me? I closed my laptop, my pulse hammering in my ears. There were only two explanations. Either this was a coincidence, some stranger who looked like a dead man, nothing more. Or Vanessa had been lying to me. For years. I spent the rest of the day pretending nothing was wrong. Pretending my world hadn't just cracked open. I went through the motions, answered emails, made calls, even grabbed lunch at my usual spot. But my mind was elsewhere, spinning over him. Daniel Cross. A dead man. Or at least, a missing one. And yet 10 years ago, there he was, watching Vanessa on her wedding day like he belonged there. Like he had some claim to her. I told myself there had to be a reasonable explanation. That it was a mistake, that I was seeing things that weren't there. But deep down, I already knew the truth. I had married a woman with secrets. And I had just found the biggest one. I waited until Vanessa got home. She walked in like any other night, kicking off her shoes, stretching her arms above her head. If I hadn't known better, I would have thought she looked relaxed. Like she wasn't keeping something from me. Like she wasn't lying. "Hey, babe," she said, dropping her purse on the counter. "Long day?" I forced a smile. "Same as always." She walked over and kissed me lightly on the lips. I kissed her back, but my mind was still in that wedding album. Still on Daniel Cross. I studied her closely as she pulled a bottle of wine from the fridge. She didn't seem nervous. No hesitation, no guilt hanging off her like a bad perfume. Whatever she was hiding? She had gotten really good at it. We ate dinner like usual. Talked about nothing, the way couples do when they've been together long enough to fill the silence with habit. I almost believed it. Almost let myself fall back into the routine of our life. Until, halfway through dinner, I asked, "Do you ever think about your first husband?" Vanessa blinked. It was a subtle reaction, but I caught it. A moment of hesitation, a flicker of something she didn't mean to show. Then she laughed lightly, swirling her wine. "Where'd that come from?" I shrugged, playing it off. "I don't know. I was unpacking earlier, found some old boxes. Made me wonder if you ever think about that time in your life." She tilted her head slightly, watching me now. "I don't really lie." She was too casual, too quick with the answer. "But you never really talk about it." I pushed. "I mean, you were married. That's a big deal." Vanessa exhaled, like this was exhausting for her. "Elliot, it wasn't some tragic love story. It was a mistake. We rushed into it, and it didn't work out. That's all." I nodded slowly. "And his friends? Your old life? You ever keep in touch?" Her jaw tightened just slightly. Another flicker of emotion, there and gone. "No," she said. "Why would I?" I studied her. She believed she was in control of this conversation. She thought she had given me enough to satisfy my curiosity. She had no idea I already knew she was lying. That night, I waited until she was asleep before slipping out of bed. I went back to the closet, to the album. I needed to look again, to see if there was anything I had missed. But when I opened the closet door, the box was gone. A chill ran through me. I checked the other closets. The storage bins. The hallway cabinets. Nothing. She had moved it. She knew I had found it. And instead of saying anything, instead of telling me the truth, she had covered her tracks. I swallowed hard, my throat dry. How long had she been keeping this from me? And what else was she hiding? The next morning, Vanessa was different. Not by much, just enough. She was watching me now, the way I had watched her the night before. Small glances over her coffee cup, like she was trying to read me. She knew something was wrong. And I wasn't the only one keeping secrets anymore. "You okay?" she asked as I grabbed my keys. I smiled. "Of course." I left before she could push further. But as I pulled out of the driveway, I wasn't heading to work. I was going to find out the truth. I started with public records. Marriage licenses, property ownership, anything I could get my hands on. If Vanessa was hiding something, I was going to find it. And after an hour of digging? I did. It wasn't what I expected. It was worse. Her first husband? His name wasn't in any records past 2012. No social media, no new addresses. Nothing. It was like he had just disappeared. But that wasn't the part that made my skin crawl. Because right underneath his name, listed in legal documents as a business associate, was Daniel Cross. I stared at the screen, my blood turning cold. Vanessa had lied to me. She hadn't just known Daniel. He had been in her life for years. And now, he was gone. Just like her first husband. I sat back, my mind racing. I had been ready for the idea that Vanessa had secrets. Maybe even an affair in her past, something she hadn't wanted to tell me. But this? This was something else. I clicked through more documents, searching for anything that could explain it. Then my phone buzzed. A text. Unknown number, stop looking, Elliot. I felt a slow, cold dread creep up my spine. Who the hell was this? Unknown number, go home. Forget the past. A pause. Then the final message. Unknown number, or you'll regret it. I stared at the screen, my pulse hammering. This wasn't a coincidence. I had uncovered something I wasn't supposed to find. And now, I wasn't just looking for the truth. I was in the middle of it. I sat there, gripping my phone, rereading the messages until the screen blurred. Stop looking, Elliot. Go home. Forget the past. Or you'll regret it. I didn't recognize the number. There was no name, no profile picture. Just 3 sentences, cold and direct, from someone who knew exactly what I was doing. And that scared the hell out of me. Because I had told no one. Vanessa didn't know I was searching. I hadn't mentioned Daniel Cross, hadn't let on that I had found those photos. So how the hell did someone know? And what did they think I was about to uncover? I forced myself to breathe, to think. I had 2 choices. I could listen. Drop it. Pretend I had never seen the album, never read the article, never connected the dots. I could go home to Vanessa, smile like nothing was wrong, and bury this deep enough that it never surfaced again. Or I could keep going. And find out exactly what Vanessa was hiding from me. I stared at the phone for another second, then set it down. There was no decision to make. I was already too deep. I started driving. I wasn't going home. I was going to find someone who knew the truth. The only connection I had to Daniel Cross was Vanessa's first husband. The man who had vanished from public records after 2012. But if he had existed once, someone had to remember him. And I had one place left to check. His old address. The neighborhood was quiet, the kind of place where the houses all looked the same and the streets were lined with trees that had been planted to make everything feel more welcoming. It was the last listed address under Vanessa's ex-husband's name, buried deep in an old real estate record from a decade ago. I parked a few houses down and stared at it. The house was still there. Still occupied. Someone had to know something. I walked up the driveway and rang the doorbell. Seconds stretched. Then footsteps. The door cracked open, and an older woman peeked out. Late 50s, short gray hair, tired eyes that scanned me with hesitation. "Can I help you?" I swallowed, adjusting my expression into something friendly. "Hi, I'm sorry to bother you. I'm looking for someone who used to live here. A man named..." Her face changed instantly. A flicker of recognition. Of fear. "You should go." I blinked. "I just wanted to ask." "Go." Her voice was sharper now, firmer. "I don't know anything." I hesitated. "Ma'am, please. I think something happened to him. I just need to know if..." She slammed the door shut. For a second, I just stood there, stunned. Then I heard it. A shuffle behind the door. A hurried, frantic locking of bolts. Like she was afraid of me. Or worse, afraid of what I was asking. I walked back to my car, my mind racing. Who the hell was this man? Why was everyone pretending he didn't exist? And why was Vanessa tangled up in all of it? I pulled out my phone, staring at the unknown messages again. Maybe they were right. Maybe I should stop. Maybe I was about to dig up something that was better left buried. But the thing about people like me? We don't fold that easily. That night, I went home like nothing had happened. Vanessa was in the kitchen, pouring herself a glass of wine. She smiled when she saw me. I smiled back. But it wasn't real. Because I knew something she didn't. I knew she had hidden the wedding album. And I knew someone was watching me now. The question was, who? And why the hell were they protecting her? I sat across from Vanessa at the dinner table, watching her the way a gambler watches the cards before placing a bet. She was relaxed, sipping her wine, scrolling through her phone like she had no idea that my entire world had cracked open. Like she hadn't erased her past. Like she wasn't lying to my face. "How was your day?" she asked casually, cutting into her steak. I forced a smile. "Same as always." She didn't blink. "Anything interesting happen?" I almost laughed. I had been warned to stop digging. I had gone to her ex-husband's old address and found a woman so terrified she wouldn't even speak his name. I had proof that Daniel Cross, the missing man in the wedding photos, had been in Vanessa's life for years. And now, here she was, acting like nothing had changed. Like she wasn't hiding something huge. But two could play that game. So I picked up my fork, took a bite, and smiled right back. Nope. Nothing at all. I barely slept that night. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, my mind running in circles. Vanessa shifted beside me, turning over in her sleep. I listened to her breathing, slow and steady, peaceful. Like she wasn't the reason my stomach felt like it was knotted in barbed wire. I turned my head slightly, looking at her. I had loved this woman. Had built a life with her. But now I wasn't sure who the hell I was sleeping next to. The next morning, Vanessa left early. "A work meeting," she claimed. But I wasn't buying it. As soon as her car pulled out of the driveway, I grabbed my laptop and started searching. I had already found Daniel Cross's disappearance, but there had to be more. And after an hour of digging, I found it. Not in police records. Not in the news. But in a message board thread buried deep on the dark corners of the internet. The title? "Daniel Cross is alive." I felt my pulse hammer as I clicked on it. The first post was from an anonymous user. The date was recent, just 2 weeks ago. "Cross isn't dead. He faked it. He's out there, and he's not done yet." I scrolled further. More comments, all vague, all hinting at something bigger. "This goes deeper than you think. It was never about the money. She knows." My stomach tightened. They weren't just talking about Daniel. They were talking about Vanessa. I shut my laptop, my hands shaking. I needed more. I needed proof. And I knew exactly where to get it. The wedding album. She had hidden it once. But if she thought I wouldn't find it again, she was dead wrong. I tore through the house. Closets, storage bins, every place she might have stashed it. Nothing. I was about to give up when I noticed something. The hallway vent. It was slightly loose. Like it had been unscrewed and hastily put back in place. My heart pounded as I reached for it, pried it open. And there it was. The wedding album. Shoved inside like a dirty secret. I pulled it out, dust falling onto my hands. My breath was sharp, uneven, as I flipped through the pages again. Same photos. Same eerie presence of Daniel Cross. But this time, I noticed something I had missed before. A handwritten note, tucked between the pages. My fingers trembled as I unfolded it. It was written in Vanessa's handwriting. And it said only 4 words. "I can't do this." A chill rushed down my spine. I didn't know what she meant. But I was about to find out. I sat on the floor, gripping the note, my breath coming short and sharp. I can't do this. 4 words, written by Vanessa, hidden inside an album she never wanted me to find. But what did it mean? I flipped the note over, hoping for more, a date, a name, a clue, but the back was blank. Just those 4 words, scribbled in rushed, nervous handwriting. I swallowed hard. She had been trying to back out of something. But what? Was it about Daniel? Her first husband? Something else entirely? I forced myself to breathe, to slow down. I couldn't let my mind spiral. Not yet. I needed to think. To be smart. I had 2 undeniable facts. 1. Vanessa had hidden this album. 2. She had written a note inside that she never intended for me to see. If I confronted her now, she'd lie. I knew that much. So I put everything back exactly as I found it. The album. The note. The vent cover. And I made a decision. I wasn't going to ask Vanessa for answers. I was going to find them myself. I spent the next few hours digging. I had already found Daniel Cross's disappearance, but there had to be more. And after an hour of searching, I found it. Not in police records. Not in the news. But in a message board thread buried deep on the dark corners of the internet. The title? Daniel Cross is alive! I felt my pulse hammer as I clicked on it. The first post was from an anonymous user. The date was recent, just 2 weeks ago. Cross isn't dead. He faked it. He's out there, and he's not done yet. I scrolled further. More comments, all vague, all hinting at something bigger. This goes deeper than you think. It was never about the money. She knows. I felt my stomach tighten. They weren't just talking about Daniel. They were talking about Vanessa. I shut my laptop, my hands shaking. I needed more. I needed proof. And I knew exactly where to get it. The wedding album. She had hidden it once. But if she thought I wouldn't find it again, she was dead wrong. I tore through the house. Closets, storage bins, every place she might have stashed it. Nothing. I was about to give up when I noticed something. The hallway vent. It was slightly loose. Like it had been unscrewed and hastily put back in place. My heart pounded as I reached for it, pried it open. And there it was. The wedding album. Shoved inside like a dirty secret. I pulled it out, dust falling onto my hands. My breath was sharp, uneven, as I flipped through the pages again. Same photos. Same eerie presence of Daniel Cross. But this time, I noticed something I had missed before. A folded piece of paper, tucked between 2 pages. My fingers trembled as I unfolded it. It was written in Vanessa's handwriting. And it said only 4 words. I can't do this. A chill rushed down my spine. I didn't know what she meant. But I was about to find out. I placed everything back, forcing myself to stay calm. Vanessa would be home soon. And I couldn't let her know I had found it. I needed to be careful. So I showered. Changed. Sat on the couch with the TV on, pretending nothing was wrong. And when Vanessa walked through the door, I acted normal. She kissed me on the cheek, her touch warm, familiar. But now, it felt different. Like she was testing me. Like she was waiting to see if I knew. And I wasn't about to let her win. So I kissed her back, smiled, and pretended I didn't know she was lying to me. Again. That night I barely slept. Vanessa curled up next to me, her breathing slow and steady. I stared at the ceiling, my mind running in circles. I had proof she was hiding something. But I still didn't know what. Or worse, why. And then, I made a mistake. A stupid, desperate mistake. I reached for her phone. I had never gone through it before. I had never needed to. But now I had no choice. I waited until her breathing deepened, waited until I was sure she was asleep. Then, carefully, I lifted her phone from the nightstand. Her passcode was easy. Our anniversary. It unlocked instantly. I went straight to her messages. At first, nothing seemed off. Work emails, group chats with friends, a few messages from me. But then, a hidden app. One I had never seen before. My chest tightened as I opened it. The messages were short, cryptic, and from an unsaved number. Unknown, we had a deal. Unknown, don't make me come find you. And then, the last message, sent just 2 days ago. Unknown, tell him. Or I will. I stared at the screen, my pulse hammering. Whoever this was, they were blackmailing Vanessa. And I finally knew why she had been acting so strange. She wasn't just keeping secrets. She was being forced to lie. And if she didn't tell me the truth soon, I had a feeling someone else would. I barely moved as I stared at Vanessa's phone, my breath shallow, my fingers gripping it too tightly. Unknown, tell him. Or I will. I read the message again, then again, my mind racing. Someone was threatening Vanessa. Someone who knew the truth. I forced myself to breathe, to stay calm, but the realization settled over me like a slow, creeping sickness. Vanessa wasn't just lying to me. She was trapped. And I needed to find out who was holding the leash. I set the phone back exactly as I found it, making sure nothing looked disturbed. Then, I lay down beside Vanessa, staring at the ceiling, waiting for my pulse to slow. But it never did. Because I had made a dangerous decision. I wasn't going to wait for Vanessa to tell me the truth. I was going to force it out of her. The next morning, I played it cool. I made coffee, kissed Vanessa on the forehead, asked about her plans like nothing had changed. She was still tense. Distracted. But she smiled, gave me quick answers, pretended things were normal. She had no idea I had read her messages. No idea I was about to set a trap. Busy day? I asked casually as she checked her phone. She glanced up. Meetings. Might run late. Lie. I had checked her calendar. She had nothing scheduled today. But I only nodded, sipping my coffee. No worries. I've got errands to run anyway. Another lie. Because the second Vanessa walked out that door, I was following her. I kept my distance as I trailed her car, staying a few cars back, keeping my movements casual. She didn't go to work. She didn't go anywhere she was supposed to. Instead, she drove across town to a rundown motel. A cold, sinking feeling settled in my gut. This wasn't a meeting. This was a secret. I pulled into a parking lot across the street, watching as she stepped out of the car. She checked her phone. Waited. Then, after a few tense seconds, he arrived. A man. Tall. Broad-shouldered. Sunglasses hiding his face, but I knew, even before he pulled them off. Daniel Cross. My pulse slammed into my ribs. Daniel Cross. The missing man? The ghost in the wedding photos. The one she had been hiding this whole time. And he wasn't dead. He was right here. I gripped the steering wheel, trying to process what I was seeing. Vanessa glanced around, nervous, checking for me, for anyone watching, then hurried toward him. He didn't hesitate. He grabbed her by the wrist and pulled her inside. My stomach twisted. Every logical thought in my head told me to wait. To stay back. To think. But logic didn't matter anymore. Not when my wife had just walked into a motel room with a dead man. I threw open my door and followed them inside. I moved quickly, quietly, down the dim hallway, my footsteps barely making a sound. The doors shut behind them. Room 214. I pressed myself against the wall, my heart hammering, listening. Muffled voices. Vanessa's? Shaken. Nervous. Then his. Deep. Calm. In control. Like he had been waiting for this moment. I swallowed hard, trying to push down the rising anger in my chest. I had to be smart. So I pulled out my phone. And I started recording. Their voices were muffled, but I could make out pieces. Vanessa. Don't have a choice. Daniel. You should have told him already. Vanessa. He doesn't know everything. Daniel laughs. Then tell him. Or I will. My blood ran cold. I had expected an affair. I had expected lies. But this was worse. Because Daniel wasn't just blackmailing her. He was in control. And Vanessa wasn't fighting back. She was folding. I had two choices. I could wait. Let them talk. Try to gather more. Or I could end this now. I didn't hesitate. I reached for the door handle. And twisted. The door wasn't locked. It flew open, slamming against the wall, making them both jump. Vanessa gasped, spinning around. Her face went pale, her mouth opening, then closing, like she didn't even know where to start. And Daniel? Daniel just smiled. Calm. Unshaken. Like he had been expecting me. Well, he said, slipping his hands into his pockets. Took you long enough. I stepped inside, closing the door behind me, my pulse hammering. Vanessa took a shaky breath. Elliot, Shut up, I snapped. Her mouth snapped shut. I turned my attention to Daniel. The missing man? The liar? The blackmailer? You've got 5 seconds to tell me what the hell is going on, I said, my voice sharp, steady. Daniel tilted his head, studying me. Then, he chuckled. All right, he said. And then, just like that, he told me everything. Daniel didn't look nervous. He didn't shift his weight, didn't glance at Vanessa for help, didn't do anything a man should do when he's been caught. Instead, he smiled. Like he had been waiting for this moment. All right, he said, leaning back against the cheap motel dresser. You want the truth? My hands curled into fists. Start talking. Vanessa looked at him, her face pale, pleading. Daniel, don't what? His tone was amused. Tell your husband what you've been hiding for the past 6 months. 6 months. My stomach twisted. Vanessa's head dropped, and in that moment I knew. It was true. I had been played. And I was about to find out how badly. Daniel ran a hand through his hair, stretching his shoulders like this was just another day for him. All right, Elliot. Let's start at the beginning. I didn't say a word. I just stared at him, waiting. He smirked. Vanessa and I have been sleeping together for years. Long before you ever met her. A dull ringing filled my ears. I expected rage. Expected to feel like I was about to explode. But all I felt was cold. Because I had already known. Maybe not in the beginning, maybe not when I found the wedding album, but deep down, I had suspected it. I had just been too much of a fool to admit it to myself. But here's the part you don't know, Daniel continued. She never stopped. I inhaled sharply, turning to Vanessa. She wouldn't meet my eyes. Vanessa? My voice was dangerously quiet. She flinched. Elliot, How long? Her lip trembled. Since before we got married. Everything inside me froze. My hands shook, but I forced them still. So the entire time? She swallowed hard. Yes. I nodded slowly, exhaling through my nose, trying to keep my breathing even. Trying not to break something. Daniel chuckled. You have no idea how many times she almost told you. I shot him a glare. Shut the hell up. He only grinned wider. And I realized something. He was enjoying this. I turned back to Vanessa. You had a choice, I said. Every day, every lie, every time you looked me in the eye, you could have stopped. You could have told me the truth. Tears slipped down her face. I know. But you didn't. She shook her head, her shoulders shaking. I didn't want to lose you. I let out a bitter laugh. Bullshit. You didn't want to lose your safety net. She winced. Elliot. I shook my head, stepping back. No. I don't want to hear it. Not anymore. I turned to Daniel. So what's your angle? Why tell me now? His smile faded slightly. Because things changed. I frowned. What the hell does that mean? He sighed, rubbing his jaw. I went missing for a reason, Elliot. The kind of people I used to work with, when you piss them off, you don't just get fired. You disappear. His words hit different. This wasn't just about an affair. There was something else. Something bigger. Vanessa didn't just cheat on you, Daniel continued. She helped me cover my tracks. Lied for me. Hid me when people were looking. My jaw clenched. She hadn't just betrayed me. She had protected him. Then why the blackmail? I asked. Why the threats? Daniel exhaled. Because she's been getting cold feet. Talking about coming clean. And if she does that, I'm dead. I glanced at Vanessa. Her face was crumbling. You're the loose end, Elliot, Daniel said. You were never supposed to find out. But you did. And now? You have a choice. I swallowed hard. Daniel held up his hands. You can pretend none of this happened. Walk away. Vanessa stays with you, I disappear for good, and you get to keep your perfect little life. I laughed. A low, bitter sound. He actually thought I would take that deal. I turned to Vanessa, watching her carefully. Is that what you want? I asked. Her breath hitched. Elliot, Yes or no? She hesitated. That was all I needed to know. I stepped back, inhaling sharply. You made your choice, Vanessa? She sobbed. Elliot, please. I shook my head. Then I walked toward the door. I was done listening. I had everything I needed. And I had one last move to make. I walked out of the motel room without looking back. Vanessa's voice followed me, broken and desperate. Elliot, please! I didn't stop. Didn't turn around. Didn't give her the chance to feed me another lie. Because I was done. I pushed through the motel doors, into the cool night air, inhaling deeply. My pulse was still pounding, my hands still shaking, but for the first time in weeks, my mind was clear. I had the truth. And now, I had a choice. I could have let it go. Could have walked away, let Vanessa and Daniel bury their secrets, let them deal with the mess they had created. But they had made a mistake. They had underestimated me. Vanessa had thought I was blind. Daniel had thought I was weak. Now they were about to learn what happened when you pushed the wrong man too far. I got into my car, gripping the steering wheel tightly. I needed to be smart. Revenge for the sake of revenge? That wasn't my style. That was what Daniel wanted. He wanted me emotional. He wanted me reckless. But I was better than him. And I had something he didn't. Proof. I pulled out my phone and hit record. Daniel's voice played through the speaker, clear as day. Vanessa didn't just cheat on you. She helped me cover my tracks. You were never supposed to find out. But you did. Now? You have a choice. I had recorded everything. And now? It was time to use it. I didn't go home. Instead, I drove straight to the police station. And I handed them Daniel Cross. I showed them the recording. Told them everything. The affair. The missing persons case. The money transfers Vanessa had hidden. And when I was done, the detective just stared at me, his expression unreadable. You understand what you're doing, right? I nodded. Completely. This wasn't about winning. It was about making sure either of them got away with it. The fallout was immediate. By the next morning, Daniel Cross was all over the news. The missing businessman, suddenly not so missing anymore. Authorities froze his accounts. Investigations were reopened. And Vanessa? She went down with him. Accessory to fraud. Perjury. Conspiracy. I had given the police enough breadcrumbs to start pulling apart her lies. And the best part? I never even had to say her name. She had left enough of a trail herself. All I did was make sure they found it. She called me, of course. 8 missed calls. Then a text. Vanessa, why are you doing this? I didn't respond. Not because I didn't have an answer. But because she already knew. 2 days later, divorce papers were filed. She never fought them. Never tried to fix what she had broken. Because she knew it was over. She had lost. Not just me. Not just the house, but everything. I sat in my empty living room that night, a glass of whiskey in hand, listening to the quiet hum of the city outside. I should have felt empty. Should have felt hollow, knowing the last few years of my life had been built on a lie. But I didn't. I felt free. Because the truth? I had been blind. But now I saw everything. And I would never let someone play me again.